What is the fastest way to silence the sounds of the mind? I want to share with you a very direct shortcut, really it is, to quiet the mind no matter where you are. But before I get into that, I just want to, what's bringing this about is that I'm seeing more and more teachings that the mind is not our friend, or the mind is the enemy, or we need to somehow cut out the mind. And that hasn't been my experience at all. But the mind is just a lot of layers of programs and conditioning that's trying its best to help you and me navigate this life. And if you really think about the mind, what is your direct experience of the mind? Let's start with that. How do you experience the mind? What is the mind communicating to you? You'll notice it's a series of thought streams, and that could be thought streams that are coming from the collective conscious of those people closest to you, in your home, in your community, in the area in which you live, and then depending on your consciousness, that can expand out, and we can pick up on thought forms from people that are a long ways away from us, because we're all connected. We're all joined at the level of mind. And also the mind is images. Right? When you think about the past, or you're thinking about preparing for the future, often we'll get visions or images that appear. And the mind also communicates through words, right? So we're hearing these words, we're seeing these images, we're getting these perceptions, all based on conditioning, right? On past programming. So the mind isn't an enemy, and it's not something we need to get rid of. Rather, it's doing the best that it can to help us navigate our experience through this form of the mind and the body. And so my experience has been befriending the mind, really showing respect for the mind and what it's trying to do to help. When it sounds really negative, it's just because it's trying to protect us from having a perceived negative experience. It's trying to alert us to beware of certain situations or conditions, environments that it believes it might harm us based on past programming. So that isn't something we need to get rid of. Rather, it's something to befriend, to understand. And what I'm experiencing both with the body and the mind in my awakening process is the more that I respect the body and the mind, the more that I actually nourish the body and the mind and thank and have gratitude, I mean deep reverence for the mind and the body. I know I'm not a body, and I know I'm not the mind. I'm very clear that the awareness that I am, that never changes, is watching, noticing what's happening with the body-mind. So I'm not the body-mind, but do I have a body and mind in which I'm experiencing this life that's unfolding through me? Absolutely. So we need to be careful, because we actually create more dualistic thinking and experience when we say, oh, I need to cut out the mind. Oh, I'm not the body, and so I should just ignore the sensations that I'm having, even if they're painful ones. Just pushing away. To me, that seems to deepen the dualistic experience. So, what's the fastest way to silence the mind? Well, one is through respect, trying to understand what the mind is communicating and thanking it. But two, the really direct way is to ask the mind. Get into a quiet place for just a moment. You could do this anywhere you are, any time of the day or night. And just gently ask the mind, what are you? You do it right here, right now with me. Ask your mind, what are you? Now, if any answers come trying to explain the mind, they're usually going to be their concepts, their thoughts. That's not the deeper truth coming through. So ask again, what are you? Let's just do it right here. What are you? And what you'll notice, you'll probably notice how quiet it has gotten. Because the mind can't really answer that question. Because it isn't anything in and of itself. It's an ongoing slew of conditioning and programmed responses. All this has been programmed into us, all the thinking, the images, the perceptions. We didn't have these when we were born. We just were. It was just all isness. Then all these thought streams start coming. We start talking, learning words, and then we start learning and being taught this and that. And then you have a programmed mind that's up and running anywhere from 2-3 years old. So when you ask, what are you? It's really quiet. The sounds of silence are noticeable. So practice this. Just gently, rather don't fight with the mind, don't push away from the mind. Just notice the mind. When it's trying to tell you something, or it's going off on a tangent, it's just doing what it's learned to do. Not to hurt you, but actually to try it in its own way to protect you. Just ask it, what are you? And then you're like, oh, you're giving it a big respite. You're like letting the mind go. You don't even have to work or do anything right now. You can just relax. You can just rest. We could just sit here and be. I hope this helps. If you have any comments about your experience with this, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you and namaste.